Did you know that the story of Disney's Recess was originally meant to continue past the feature film Recess School's Out? I know, right? I was shocked to find out too. That show was just so relatable as a kid, and I feel like it genuinely had potential for a positive outcome if it had continued just a tiny bit further. The thing is though, with the cast of primarily child voice actors growing up, as well as a whopping 5 seasons under their belt and a 6th season that's kind of considered a compilation of the series' lost episodes, it would make sense that Disney would end the story being told mainly through the full-length movie. I mean, sure, they did order that 6th season after the movie, but it was really strange because the movie was about them finishing 4th grade and starting summer, but then for some reason, season 6 would be very short and would have the kids still in 4th grade, oddly enough. The biggest reason for all of this, though, would be Disney's infamous 65-episode rule that would result in a majority of their popular original series being forcibly wrapped up at the 65-episode mark. In the late 90s and early 2000s, Disney enforced this rule hard, and as a result, shows like Lizzie McGuire, Even Stevens, and of course Recess would sadly be capped at 65 episodes. I feel like, on one hand, this gave the network the opportunity to consistently keep things fresh in the new era of Disney, but on the other hand, cherished childhood shows would routinely come to a bittersweet end as a result. Such would be the case for Recess. Nevertheless, today I was so surprised to learn that the show's production team made multiple episodes that took place after the events of the Recess movie, and would actually center around the kids being in 5th grade now, with a lot of themes surrounding growing up. They would pitch the episodes to Disney, however, Disney would look that proverbial gift horse in the mouth and tell them, nope, 65 episode rule. As a result, the final episodes of Recess would be doomed to a fate worse than being aired on an obscure sister channel like Disney XD. Worse than being given away on VHS tapes with Happy Meals at McDonald's. Okay, maybe not that bad. That was pretty rough. But still, whatever. They were released direct to video. Disney had this amazing opportunity to keep a beloved show going for at least one additional season to wrap things up neatly, but instead they decided to have the crew behind Recess come up with some filler footage to put between these 3 standalone episodes in an attempt to weave them into this strange tale that would work perfect under the guise of a lackluster mid-2000s Disney direct-to-video spin-off movie. I guess they didn't want to let these episodes go to waste, which I mean, I can at least appreciate that. But the thing is, the final product really felt like a missed opportunity all in all. I think another season of Recess with the gang being in 5th grade would have been such a phenomenal way to end this series. With all that being said though, I was so surprised to learn that one of those episodes, the final one as a matter of fact, was actually a Halloween episode. That would technically mean that Recess's series finale is a Halloween special, and that right there just sparks so much joy. Furthermore, with this individual Halloween special only being released direct to video as part of a movie, it never had the opportunity to air on Disney in its original intended format. Sure, Disney may have ran its haphazardly thrown together movie featuring this part, but when the episode was made, it was done with the intention of being a standalone episode. Honestly guys, I've been wanting to talk about Recess for a really long time now. I want to make some deep dive videos in the future about the series, but for now, we're starting it slow. Today, on our nostalgic walk down memory lane, we're going to check out the unaired Halloween special, A Recess Halloween. Now, fair warning, I haven't watched this show in at minimum 20 years, so I am amped to watch it back for the first time with you guys and remember just what made me love this show so much. In all fairness though, my friends, I am not talking about this entire hour and a half long movie that Disney packaged this episode in. We're just covering the Halloween portion because the other 2 that came before it are considered separate episodes in my opinion. This episode starts out on the day of October 31st, as TJ and the rest of the gang, save for Spinelli, stand outside of a costume shop while Gus is stoked about finally deciding on the costume that he wants.
When school's out today, I'm heading right in there and buying it.
Good choice, Gus.
Yeah, Garnuff is wicked.
Wonderfully wicked. Unfortunately, that girl in there seems to think so too.
Huh? No! Mr. Kelso, you can't sell that! It's the last one in the store!
Happy Halloween to you too, Gus.
Gus panics, wondering what he's gonna do now that the only costume he wanted is sold out. TJ calms him a bit, saying that they still have a whole 12 hours to prepare, so he shouldn't sweat it too hard. As the friends walk down the street, TJ and Vince discuss their costumes, and they begin to poke fun at each other, debating whose costume idea is more scary.
I'm sure you'll both be very scary, but no one will be as frightening as Spinelli.
Oh yeah, Spinelli always has the best costume. Remember last year when she was a mutant with pus shooting out of her eyes?
A tasty concoction of sprayed cheese and pistachio pudding.
Yeah, I gotta admit, she was scary, and she sure raked in the candy.
Nobody has the Halloween spirit like Spinelli.
Now, we gotta stop for a sec because I am just so overwhelmed with memories coming back right now. It's been such a long time since I've enjoyed this show, and it's amazing to see these characters again and remember all of their mannerisms and tropes. I love this whole crew, of course, but I have to give a shout out to my forgotten favorite, Mikey. I remember him as a character, but I totally forgot how eloquently spoken and gentle he is. I remember him being my favorite of the group when I was a kid without a doubt. Him and Vince, of course, because Vince is the man, no further explanation needed. The rest of the crew is cool as well, of course, but based just on this intro scene, I'm so looking forward to the rest of this episode. We see the kids approach the school wondering where Spinelli is, but TJ says she's probably late making a huge batch of fake blood. Shockingly enough, though, they find Spinelli in the classroom of all places, having shown up for class uncharacteristically early and taken her seat already. The bell rings, and we see TJ take his seat also.
All right, quiet down, you miscreants, and happy Halloween. I know how you all love this day, so I've prepared a special treat. Yam cupcakes with prune icing. There's only enough for one apiece, so don't be greedy.
Oh my god. How could I have forgotten about Ms. Finster? She's such an old, crabby sweetheart. She may be a grumpy old lady, but we all know deep down inside that she's got these kids' best interest at heart. I always found some appreciation for her throughout the series, even though she was a primary antagonist for the most part. For clarity's sake, by the way, I did a little research and found out that apparently the 5th grade teacher that all of these kids were, really looking forward to learning from transferred to another school. As a result, Miss Finster ends up being their teacher in 5th grade as well. Again, just throwing that in for clarity because I feel like this show and its timeline at the end can get a little muddy. Like, between the whole ending 4th grade in the movie, coming back to 4th grade again in the season after the movie, then now they're in 5th grade in this movie, but Miss Finster is still here. It's like they might as well be in 4th grade still. Whatever, though.
Miss Finster, thanks for the cupcakes and all, but I can't help wondering, how come you dressed up as a big mosquito?
A mosquito? I'm not a mosquito, I'm a fairy princess.
Why, Miss Finster, what a surprise! Look at me, I'm dressed as a fairy prince. I had no idea we'd match, but isn't it great?
Sorry, Randall. This is the one day of the year when you don't get points for kissing up.
Randall. I can't stand this kid. He drives me up a wall. He was always such a little tattletale and just an overall cringed suck-up. I will say, though, I love seeing Miss Finster straight up shoot his brown-nosing down in this one. She's not having any of that trash today. And I'm sorry, I can't not bring this up, you guys. We all know that Randall dressed up as a fairy prince just to suck up to Miss Finster. He looks like just such a little... never mind. Nothing nice to say, then say nothing at all. In all reality, though, I have to think, is the way that Randall acts even his fault? Ms. Finster even straight up said that this is the one day of the year that he doesn't get points for kissing up. That would imply that other days he actually does get points for the weird brown nosy stuff that he does? So does this mean literal extra credit towards his grade? Because if so, I'm pretty sure that's not kosher. If she means like brownie points, then by all means, he's just a little apple polisher. But if he's getting actual legit points towards his grade for the things he does, then like, yeah, I can't blame the kid for being how he is, I guess. In that case, it's really all just Ms. Finster's fault. Speaking of Ms. Finster, she tells the class that it's time to kick off phase 2 of their Halloween festivities as they sing Sweet Tooth Igor, the candy-loving vampire bat.
Spinelli, you're a big fan of Halloween traditions. Start singing.
Thanks, but no thanks, Miss Finster.
Like, pick us, Miss Finster, pick us! We are such totally better singers anyway.
All right, Ashley's front and center. And after that, we'll bob for pickles.
Ugh, the Ashleys. The freaking Ashleys, dude. Those girls are quite possibly the biggest pick-me, goody-two-shoes, self-righteous, annoying characters in this show. I mean, maybe right behind Randall if we're being honest, but I mean, the nerve. Like, it's one thing to volunteer and beg to be picked. However, it's not like anybody else was chomping at the bit quite like they were. They didn't have to go as far as saying we're better singers anyway. The complete lack of self-awareness combined with the total disregard for others is just kind of baffling, to be honest. I can't stand people like that. Ms. Finster throws on a record and all the kids sing along to it happily, that is, except for Spinelli, who Vince and TJ both notice isn't participating and is just sitting at her desk looking sad. We then fast forward to lunch, where the gang is in the cafeteria getting their serving of the lunch lady's annual Halloween mystery, which seems to be a hot commodity among all of the kids in school. As they finish grabbing their food, TJ is really confused to see Spinelli sitting all alone and eating a sandwich from a home-packed lunch, instead of the mystery surprise lunch that she's usually really excited about.
I gotta say, Spinelli, I'm a little worried about you. It's Halloween, but you didn't walk with us this morning, you didn't sing in class, and now you're not even eating the mystery lunch.
Could it be that you simply wore a Spinelli costume to school, but you really aren't Spinelli at all?
Spinelli explains that it really is her and that she's just changed. When her friends are confused, she says that she didn't really want to talk to them about it because the last thing she wants to do is spoil their Halloween. Now, I definitely want to take a moment to point out how mindful this is of Spinelli. I'll admit that it sucks seeing her struggle in silence, especially when you consider that her friends are more than happy to be there for her, but it does say a lot about her character that she would reserve sharing these hard feelings because she doesn't want to affect her friends and ruin their Halloween spirit. Spinelli is one of those characters who I loved because I always recall seeing her be portrayed as bold, brash, and strong. However, she's not emotionally inept, and moments like this are absolute proof of that. Spinelli is an incredible character in general. Of course, her friends keep asking her about what happened, so she decides to explain as we get a flashback to her recent trip to the pumpkin patch. We see Spinelli getting out of the car with her parents as they talk about how amazing it is that this pumpkin patch hasn't changed at all since they first started their family tradition of bringing her here as a baby. She happily runs off, saying that she's gonna get the freakiest looking pumpkin that she can find.
Perfect! You are gonna make the ugliest, scariest, creepiest jack-o'-lantern on the block!
Jack-o'-lantern? Well. Spinelli's gonna make a little bitty jack-o'-lantern. What do you know about that?
Beat it, Lawson! And so what if I'm making a jack-o'-lantern? You guys got pumpkins too!
Oh, we ain't gonna carve them. We're gonna bust them open with heavy stuff.
I got a brick for my birthday.
Okay, I don't know what's going on here, but did I hate everyone other than the main crew in this show growing up? I mean, I don't remember hating everyone, but man, the more this episode goes on, I keep finding myself being like, oh yeah, I can't believe I forgot about this D-bag. And man, Lawson might just be the king of the D-bags. This kid is such a freaking arrogant jerk. It's funny because as a bully, he's not even like a violent one per se. He just talks a lot of smack and thinks he's better than everyone else. Don't be a Lawson. Nobody likes Lawson. Also, what the hell is up with this kid? Who gave him a brick for his birthday? What? Whatever, it's not important. Lawson and his little friends continue to bully Spinelli as they start to make fun of her for wanting to go out trick-or-treating when she's a 5th grader. He tells her to look around and realize that she's the oldest kid out here, except for them, using that to prove his point that Halloween is for babies.
Spinelli's a 5th grade baby! Ha ha! You gotta stop trick-or-treating sometime, Spinelli. So when's it gonna be?
None of your business, Lawson. Now beat it.
Oh, we'll beat it, Spinelli. Yes, we will beat it. Come on, guys.
Spinelli's parents walk up and compliment her pumpkin choice, and she asks if they can just go now, which leaves them surprised, considering they just got there. Her parents ask her about participating in some of their usual pumpkin patch traditions, but she tells them that she's just not feeling like it all of a sudden.
Let's buy the pumpkin and go, okay?
Well, all right, but not before I get a picture of you sitting on the giant pumpkin. I've got a picture of you every year since you were a baby.
Okay, a few things here. First of all, Spinelli's mother, I'm not 100% sure, but I think is supposed to kind of be a play on Peggy from Married with Children. However, I've only seen bits and pieces of that show, so I can't recall for sure. However, I do know that the voice actor behind Mrs. Spinelli is none other than Katie Seagal, who played Peggy, so that definitely could be the case. The funny thing is, though, the only character I can hear when she speaks is Leela from Futurama. Honestly, I love Katie Seagal, but no matter what role she plays, in my heart, she will always be Leela. That voice is just too synonymous with that character for me. Sticking to the topic of this episode though, it really hurts my soul to see a kid like Spinelli feeling self-conscious about her traditions with her family, all because of some older kids who feel the need to bring others down. This poor girl is a literal 5th grader. That's the last year of elementary school. These kids, who are in all reality only 1 year older than her, act like childhood ends at 4th grade, which is just so obnoxious. Lawson, I hate you. We cut on over to the giant pumpkin where Spinelli and her parents approach, and her dad lifts her up and sets her on top of it.
Smile and say spooky.
Spooky.
Oh, baby, I'm so sorry. I guess you've gotten too big to sit on the pumpkin.
Who'd have thought, Pookie? Boy, you really must be growing up.
Now, I'm pretty sure I forgot to bring this up earlier, but I actually never watched the movie that this episode was released as a part of. With that being said, I'm not familiar with what happens next, but I will say this much. I wouldn't be surprised for a second if we found out that Lawson and his friends actually beat the crap out of that pumpkin to make it so Spinelli would fall through it. Especially considering the way that D-bag Lawson ominously said, "Oh, we'll beat it." My brain wants to leap to put 2 and 2 together, placing the blame on him, but on that same note, I'm also not too sure how Lawson and his friends would have known that Spinelli was going to sit on the pumpkin to begin with. They couldn't have possibly known that Spinelli and her parents have that tradition, right? I will fully admit, me reading into him saying, "Oh, we'll beat it," the way I am, definitely implies that he knew she would be sitting on the pumpkin, so he and his friends purposely sabotaged it, and, well, that's definitely a bit of a stretch. From there, we end the flashback and cut back to the present where Spinelli is explaining to the rest of the gang that for the first time in his life, Lawson was right about something. She is too big for Halloween. TJ and the rest of her friends argue, saying that it was the fault of a defective pumpkin, but Spinelli says that it's more than that. She says that Halloween just doesn't feel the same to her anymore, though they all try to reassure her that her mindset will change once she gets her costume on and they go out trick-or-treating. She shoots them down, saying that she doesn't have a costume and she isn't going out, so they're gonna need to make plans without her. Spinelli walks away in frustration, and we cut to later that night where she's saying goodbye to her parents, who are headed out to a Halloween party, having tasked her with handing out candy to trick-or-treaters since she's planning on staying home anyways.
Put this on when you answer the door. The kids will love it.
I'm not putting a mask on, Dad. Remember, I'm too old.
Whatever you think is best, Pookie, but I'm telling you, it's a hoot.
Whatever.
We'll be back by 10, sweetie.
Happy Halloween!
Thanks.
man, the way you can just hear the sadness in Spinelli's voice here. It's like she's almost sadly envious that she no longer possesses that childlike happiness that her parents still seem to have. This frustrates me so much. Again, circling back to Lawson's actions and how he and his friends got in her head. I think the reason that it hits so hard is because Halloween is Spinelli's favorite time of year, and it's a holiday that really falls in line with the basis and tropes of her character. That and the fact that, again, she's just a normal kid trying to enjoy her childhood. It's so ironic, though, to see the way that Spinelli's parents raise her in comparison to how she is portrayed in this show. Like, her parents are incredibly happy and friendly people. They seem like the kind of folks who are just so positive and supportive in general, but especially to their daughter. You can tell that she's a kid who's being raised in a house that likely embraces individuality, autonomy, and unconditional love. As a result, Spinelli has always felt free to be exactly who she wants to be unapologetically. Again, that oftentimes comes across as her being really tough, strong, and kind of brash with her opinions. But if we keep in mind that, again, that comes from a place of those opinions always being validated in the house that she grew up in, as well as her always being built up and embraced, it's a really cool thing to see. Looking back on the show as a parent myself, I really appreciate the way that they portrayed Spinelli's parents. Honestly, I'll admit that they are rather caricaturized, but just alone the fact that they're so loving and they allow their daughter to be herself uninfluenced by their opinions is amazing, and I think that a lot of parents could learn a thing or two from them. Also, on a completely unrelated note, God, I just have to say it, they totally look like stereotypical swingers, and that's just so funny to me. Shortly after her parents leave, Spinelli's friends all show up, hoping to take her trick-or-treating with them. She doubles down on saying that she isn't going, explaining that once you outgrow something, you can't un-outgrow it. TJ challenges that thought process, saying that she only feels that way because she's focused on her bad pumpkin patch experience and not all of the great times that they usually have on Halloween night. They all take a few moments to reflect on the good times that they've had. The heaping spoonfuls of candy from Mrs. Edelman, the thrills and chills at Old Man McPherson's house, and walking past the old abandoned prison that surely houses an old inmate who's watching you. The scariest of all by far, though, is the last stop of the night, the old Gordon place.
To this day, I swear to you that those people are vampires.
Hello there, children. Maybe you'd like some candy.
It's the finest candy. I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
Yep, those Transylvanian accents are a dead giveaway.
Sorry, TJ, but those aren't Transylvanian accents. The Gordons are from Massachusetts. I asked my mom.
Spinelli explains to her friends that she appreciates looking back on the old memories, but if they're gonna have fun tonight, they need to get going without her. She says that the magic is just gone, and that's just what happens when you get older. Spinelli tells them that she'll see them tomorrow as she shuts the door. The gang is all just confused, considering that they're all the same age as her and their feelings about Halloween haven't changed at all. But regardless, they head on their merry way to begin the festivities. Before we continue, right now is just too perfect of a time to not show some love to the Halloween costumes here. I absolutely adore the direction that they went with for every single costume, as they all feel really well thought out for the most part. I love how TJ and Vince are both zombie-esque characters and really don't look too different from one another. This, of course, is calling back to earlier in the episode where they were arguing over whose costume is scarier, basically splitting hairs over what they're dressing up as. I feel like them being shown on screen next to each other like this is a perfect visual metaphor, highlighting how pointless and ironic that this whole debate was in hindsight. Though the whole friend group is close to each other, TJ and Vince are two peas in a pod. They're so similar to one another, yet different where it counts, in a way that's beneficial to their friendship. It's really funny though, because it results in weird times like earlier in this episode where it almost seems like there was a bit of a rivalry there between the two, but in all reality, they're just two friends who are so incredibly alike one another. Meanwhile, Gretchen over here as Albert Einstein just has me in stitches. This is just kind of obnoxiously fitting, of course, because she's portrayed as the, geeky one of the group, for lack of a better word. But the reason I love it is that mustache. Gretchen with an Albert Einstein mustache is just way too funny to me. The way it covers her whole mouth, too, it's just awesome. Then we have Mikey, who is a jack-o'-lantern, and that's just the perfect choice. He's such a gentle and positive guy that wearing a pumpkin costume just really feels like it fits so well for his personality type. Meanwhile, Gus being a toilet paper mummy after the whole entire costume conundrum earlier in this episode is just too much. This one began with the costume he wanted being sold out. Then later on, I honestly skipped over this part because it wasn't really too relevant, but he decided on a different costume, but then the principal showed up dressed in that same exact costume, which made him change his mind immediately. Ultimately, it looks like he settled with wrapping himself in toilet paper. But hey, it works though, and it's cheap, especially considering this was the early 2000s. We then cut on over to the first stop on the kids' adventure, Mrs. Edelman's house, where they usually receive big spoonfuls of candy. Thankfully, this year is no different than the last, with her dishing them up with plenty of sweet treats. However, Gretchen looks a little too close for the first time, peeling back the curtain, revealing a secret that leaves all of the kids shocked.
Not to look a gift horse in the mouth, but this candy is sugarless.
What? Say it ain't so! Well, of course it is. I always give out sugarless candy. I am a dentist after all. Happy Halloween! And remember to brush and floss tonight. Oh, I know you will.
The kids are all taken back as Gretchen realizes that she's always been so overwhelmed with excitement that she's never really taken the time to read the fine print on any of her Halloween candy. I'll be honest, you guys, this one really has me rolling my eyes so hard. Every year, these kids get the same candy from Mrs. Edelman, and they're always stoked about it. They clearly have eaten it happily every year in the past, and not really looked much further past that. However, all of a sudden, now that they realize it's sugar-free candy, they don't like it. It's not like it tastes any different now than it ever did before. By all means, I get how knowing the ingredients in something can change your perceptions of it, but they act like this is some big, atrocious attack on Halloween. First of all, I think they should probably just be thankful that this dentist of all people even hands out candy in the first place and not like dental floss and toothbrushes. Regardless of if it's sugar-free, at least it's still candy that, again, we all know they enjoy and have been thankful for previously due to their blissful ignorance to the ingredients in years past. I do want to point out that I'd totally get the argument if it was centered around the problematic artificial sweeteners that could potentially be present in the candy, but it's not that at all. It's just children being children and having strong feelings about the need for candy and soda to contain actual sugar. It was a whole trope in the early 2000s for some reason too. Pretty sure Codename Kids Next Door did a similar thing as well, if I recall correctly. Kids in the early 2000s were oftentimes shown as obsessed with sugar and the likely placebo effect we all know as sugar rush. Just the thought of subtly swapping their sweet, sweet sugar for a sugar substitute was seen as a cardinal sin and would have you essentially crucified. I just find it, I don't know, a little ridiculous because it wasn't a problem in the past, but now they're choosing to let it be a problem. As the kids continue their adventure, we cut on over to Spinelli's house where we see Digger Sam and Digger Dave show up to trick or treat. They end up being very off-put by Spinelli's less than stellar attitude about Halloween and her inability to even pretend to be excited.
Sorry, guys. I grew out of it.
Well, not us. And there are a lot of little kids coming this way. We'll tell them to skip this house if you're just gonna be a grump.
No, don't tell them that. I'll try and act more into it, okay?
Well, okay.
Seconds after they walk away, some little kids approach, and as Spinelli gives them candy, she spooks them with the mask that her dad recommended her to wear, feeling joy from the happiness that the little scare brought to the kids. As Spinelli stands there happily reflecting, we cut on over to her friends arriving at Mr. McPherson's house, excited to experience his terrifying setup yet again. they all approach, feeling anxious with fear as they traverse through the graveyard and towards the terrifying man holding the bowl of candy. They stop for a moment, wondering what Spinelli would say about this, and ultimately, they all agree that instead of running away in fear this time, they're going to stay and resist the urge to run, wanting to see what happens when the monster gets you.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, great. You broke my motorized ghoul dummy. Now I'm gonna have to patch him with chicken wire.
Sorry, Mr. McPherson.
Well, you should be. The little kids who really believe in ghouls sure are gonna be disappointed now.
After Mr. McPherson goes inside, the kids all realize, now that his lights are on, the gravestones are all just made of plywood. This makes them think about everything Spinelli said, and they start to think that when you look at things a different way, it really does take away all of the magic. Speaking of Spinelli, we cut back over to her house, where we see her really sweetly giving tips to some little kids about how to be scary before she douses them with some fake blood for effect. They run off happily, leaving Spinelli with a big old smile on her face.
Hey there, Spinelli. Happy Halloween.
Miss Finster? You scared the bejeebers out of me.
That's the idea.
Hey, I thought you were a fairy princess.
Only till the moon comes out.
Now, really quick, please don't forget that comment right there. Only till the moon comes out. We're going to circle back to that here in a little bit. For now, though, Miss Finster explains that she was looking for Spinelli's parents to invite them to a party that she's heading to. Spinelli explains that her parents are already out at a different party, and Miss Finster gets confused, asking her why she's sitting at home and not out with her friends trick-or-treating. She answers honestly, saying that she feels like she's gotten too old to enjoy Halloween. Miss Finster goes to leave, passing Spinelli a piece of paper with a phone number on it for her parents to reach her if they get home in time for another party, but Spinelli asks Miss Finster if maybe she has a few minutes to answer some questions for her. As that's happening, we cut across town where Vince, TJ, Gus, Gretchen, and Mikey are all standing outside of the abandoned prison, feeling a little confused as to why they aren't running away terrified like they were last year.
How come I'm not that scared? Because it ain't scary, you dopes. Oh, don't tell me you little trick-or-treaters still think that place is an old prison.
Well, sure we do. That's what it is.
What's it to you, Lawson?
Oh, nothing. Except you're wrong. Carrillo. Huh?
The kids are all shocked at the revelation that all along, this building was never a literal prison, but rather a boring old prison of licensing bureaucracy. They're all just so disappointed at this news as Lawson and his friends walk off saying that they're gonna find some other kids' parade to rain on. At this point, even TJ, who's been holding out, is feeling defeated and starting to think that maybe they are too old for Halloween. Now, this moment right here is just such a spirit breaker, man. Along the way of this journey, we've seen each of these kids in the group lose hope. But TJ was the one who was still holding on no matter what. However, this being the straw that breaks the camel's back for him is just so crushing. He's a resilient kid and more or less the de facto leader of the group. Seeing him start to give up really just kind of shows that they're all losing hope, and that's a painful point to reach. It honestly takes a lot to take down the will of a kid like TJ Detweiler. After that, we cut back to Spinelli's house, where her and Miss Finster are sitting down and talking. She confides in Miss Finster about how conflicted she is between feeling too old for Halloween and feeling awful just sitting here alone while all of her friends are out having fun.
I kind of want to be out there with them.
Well, why wouldn't you? Halloween is great.
Well, sure, when you're little.
Heck, I'm in the prime of my womanhood, and just look at me. I love Halloween.
But aren't you ever going to grow out of it?
Who knows? Some do, some don't. It's not really about how old you are, it's how you feel inside.
Spinelli ends up feeling even more confused, but Miss Finster tells her that tough girls like them don't let anyone tell them how to feel, and that she needs to trust herself. On that note, Miss Finster puts her costume back on, genuinely wishes Spinelli a happy Halloween regardless of how she wishes to spend it, and she heads out to go to her party. Okay, we have a few things that I need to touch on here. The first of which being Ms. Finster saying she's in the prime of her womanhood. This right here is a hilarious comment considering that Ms. Finster is like 70 years old, but also, not gonna lie, it's a true one. Ms. Finster has proven to be extremely fit and competent time and time again regardless of her age. I'd go as far as saying that she's probably been in the prime of her womanhood since a little while before she was a Navy Commodore in the Korean War in the early 50s, which, by the way, is actually canon for this show. Furthermore, it made me really happy knowing that this was the very end of the show, and it would end up being Ms. Finster of all people who would help Spinelli find her true feelings. It's one of those things where when you keep the years of history in mind between these characters, this is a truly sweet moment. Now, I do have to circle back to what was said earlier though, when Spinelli points out that Ms. Finster isn't a fairy princess anymore and she responds saying that she's only a werewolf when the moon is out. Of course, this was obviously a funny reference to her turning into a werewolf by the light of the full moon. But if you look a little further into it, this is also a very symbolic metaphor for the role that Ms. Finster plays. In a way, you could look at this change of costumes and going from a fairy princess to a werewolf as her taking off that teacher mask she wears at work every day to become her true self outside of school. By all means, though Miss Finster is rather authoritarian in nature as a teacher, this moment and the change in costumes highlights her ability to be an actual human who really does care about these kids. Not just the abrasive teacher that she needs to be in order to keep all like 30 of her students in line. Underneath that stone-cold teacher persona is a woman who sees a lot of herself in Spinelli, and it made me really happy to know that in the last 10 minutes of this show ever produced, they took the time to put the two of them together. This was a really sweet moment, and it made me appreciate Ms. Finster a lot. After thanking Ms. Finster for her guidance, Spinelli writes up a letter for her parents, sets out the candy bowl with a sign for the trick-or-treaters, and she throws on the skull mask her dad gave her, heading out the door to find her friends and embrace the joy of Halloween. She walks down the street, asking all of her classmates that she comes across if they've seen her friends.
Hey, you looking for TJ and the guys?
Yeah, Hustler Kid, have you seen them?
Yeah, about 10 minutes ago. They were heading home.
Home? Already?
They seemed kind of down in the dumps, saying stuff like how you were right. They're too old for Halloween.
Oh no, I ruined it for them. Now what am I gonna do? Hey, wait a minute. Hustler Kid, let me use your cell phone. I got some calls to make.
All right, but if you're planning some shady conspiracy, just be sure you don't implicate me.
Okay, first of all, I completely forgot about Hustler Kid. This dude is legendary and was always one of my favorite out-of-pocket characters. The pièce de résistance, however, is the fact that he's dressed up as Richard Nixon of all people. That, plus him saying not to implicate him in her conspiracy and everything, it's just too perfect. As a kid, I had no idea even what that mask was supposed to be, but as an adult, I just love Recess so much. A while later, we see Spinelli with all of her friends who just showed up to meet her at the old Gordon place. However, they're all feeling defeated and confused as to why she called them there. Gretchen points out that everywhere else they've gone from their past hasn't lived up to their expectations, so she doesn't really know what's gonna make this one any different.
Every other year the Gordons lived here, but I just happened to know that they moved away. And this year, no one lives here.
So,
how's about we pay a visit to the inside?
All of her friends panic at the thought of going into the house, but when she asks if they're scared, TJ points out that if they are too old to trick-or-treat now, they're old enough to handle some old empty house. Just like that, they all walk up, rather apprehensively.
Why, TJ is growing up. He's developed adolescent powers of magic.
I didn't do that, guys. The door opened by itself.
Okay, Mikey, that was just way too funny. And seriously, not even a chuckle or a peep from any of the other kids? I swear, Mikey's just such an underrated gem of a character. This episode is reminding me of everything that I absolutely love about him. We're Team Mikey around these parts, for sure. The friends all panic and speculate, thinking maybe it could have been a ghost or something that caused the door to open on its own. Gretchen suggests that maybe they should ponder all rational explanations from the safety of their homes.
Guys, if we're gonna be big, we gotta go inside.
This right here was a huge moment, you guys. It was at this exact moment that I connected all of the dots and everything in life just kind of made sense. When Spinelli said that, I could have sworn that I was hearing Bobby Hill from King of the Hill talking. All along, I've been listening to Spinelli's voice and I just couldn't figure out who it sounded like for the life of me, but that sentence right there made it hit me like a ton of bricks. Spinelli's voice actor is none other than the same exact person who did Bobby Hill, and, well, just like that, I will never hear Spinelli the same way again. It's always going to be Spinelli Hill from this point on. All the friends head into the house and they look around, but as soon as they get into the entrance hall, the door slams shut, causing them all to panic. TJ tries to open it, but it's no use. As the panic sets in, they all start to hear a mysterious, deep moaning sound coming from a door nearby. Spinelli Hill goes to investigate and finds that it's a doorway leading down into a cellar.
I'm going down.
Spinelli, no! Spinelli!
Gotcha!
All of the kids are shocked and surprised to learn that all of the monsters they were so terrified by were none other than their teachers and principal. Ms. Finster explains that she was at a party here at the Gordons' house when Spinelli called and asked for help setting up a Halloween trick.
That's right. I set you up, guys.
Why would you do such a cruel and horrible thing?
'Cause it's fun.
You know, now that I realize I'm safe, the last 10 minutes were rather thrilling.
Kinda like Halloween in the good old days, huh? Well, these still are the good old days as long as you want them to be. And don't let some Goomba convince you otherwise.
After that, the adults reveal a table full of real candy, chock full of sugar, and the kids all start to stuff their candy bags with joy. Meanwhile, across the room, Spinelli has a touching moment with Ms. Finster.
Well, Spinelli, it looks like your little plan worked.
I owe it all to you, Miss Finster. Thanks to you, everyone's having a happy Halloween.
Well, it's like my mother always used to say.
This episode is one that I genuinely love for so many reasons, but the biggest of which is that it comes along with a really important metaphor that really only goes as deep as you allow it to. I mean, if you take this one exactly at face value, it's a matter of what Spinelli said. The days you're living now still are the good old days if you want them to be. And you shouldn't let some Goomba convince you otherwise. Spinelli, if anything, other than being Bobby Hill, is definitely a free thinker. Seeing her caught up in doubting that throughout this episode was really tough, but it made me happy seeing her come to the conclusion that she did through the guidance of Ms. Finster of all people, as well as trusting herself more importantly. The point made here can be left at that, and it's perfectly digestible. If you're the kind of person who likes to pull back the curtain and look further into some of the additional context we're given, though, there's actually a lot more that you could pull from the situations presented throughout this episode. Taking it chronologically, I found it interesting how Spinelli was making this all about age and growing older, when, in all reality, it wasn't about how much time you've had on this earth. It's about having your perceptions and joy crushed by someone who's being a total downer because they themselves lack joy. To be specific, we see Spinelli at the pumpkin patch with her family, ready to enjoy their yearly traditions, when Lawson and his friends start judging her for enjoying Halloween at the age that she's at, and even more so, her family traditions, which made Spinelli feel self-conscious and made her not want to participate in the things that she usually loves. Case in point, the moment where she's in a rush to leave the pumpkin patch uncharacteristically early. This part made me really sad because I've been in this exact moment myself in real life. It wasn't the pumpkin patch near Halloween, but I've been in positions where I'm happily ready to participate in a yearly family tradition, and someone who's judging me or making me feel bad about myself leaves me in a spot where I just want to go home and literally do nothing. Poor Spinelli was feeling that super hard. She didn't want to go trick-or-treating or even dress up at all. It's really sad when you consider that these are all things that Spinelli has years of history loving. However, Lawson spreading his negativity to her would bring her down, and as a result, that same exact negativity would spread like a disease to the rest of Spinelli's friends, as she would in turn make them question their perceptions of the things that bring them joy on Halloween. It was a real heartbreaker to see these kids doing all of the cherished things that they used to do in their memories, but they just didn't hit the same now that they have Spinelli's, or should I say Lawson's, negative energy infecting their good time. Sadly enough though, this is a cycle. What this episode is portraying under all of these layers is a perpetuating cycle that has the snake eating its own tail repeatedly at this point. Lawson spreading this negative energy didn't come from nowhere. I am confident that Lawson has a parent or an older sibling or someone older in his life that either treated him badly or influenced him with negativity, and as a result, Lawson is the way that he is to everyone younger than him. Now, we don't really have any evidence of this as far as I can recall, but regardless, it was really cool to see Spinelli go from being taunted by him to ultimately recognizing that it was up to her to break the cycle of crummy behavior that he was perpetuating from one grade down to another. Specifically, I want to take a second to highlight this moment right here when Spinelli smiles after giving those kids a good scare and some candy. This right here was her realizing that a huge part of that Halloween magic is participation. Before she did that, she was like almost putting on this old lady act, saying, "My, what creepy costumes you kids have." However, the kids weren't really having it, especially considering they weren't dressed up scary at all. When she stopped faking it though, and threw on that mask, deciding to participate in the fun, it completely changed not only the kids' demeanor, but also her whole entire outlook on Halloween. This smile right here was the moment where you can really feel Spinelli connecting those dots. That same energy continued on to those slightly older kids who she helped improve their scaring and sprayed with some fake blood later on. Spinelli encouraging them and buying into the magic of the Halloween spirit was what made an entire world of difference. It was almost as if she was seeing herself and her friends and all of these younger kids that were coming to her house in search of candy and good times. From there, with the understanding that it was up to her to break the cycle that Lawson and his friends were continuing, she decided that instead of being a jerk to those kids and ruining their fun like Lawson did to her, it was up to her to embrace them and give them some tips on how to be more scary. She did things to not only help embrace tradition and foster an environment where kids can feel safe being kids and not feel judged, but to also let those kids know that older kids, at least the kids near her age, typically don't have any negative intentions or ill will towards them. To which the same definitely couldn't be said about Lawson and his friends in regards to pretty much anyone younger than them. The last thing here I really want to hype up in closing is the symbolism behind Spinelli taking her friends to the old Gordon house of all places. Now, if you remember all the way back to the start, this was the very first place that Spinelli debunked to her friends, explaining that their accents were a result of where the Gordons moved from. The fact that she took them back here means she acknowledges that was the moment where she started to have the problematic behaviors that ultimately resulted in all of her friends not feeling the Halloween spirit either. The act of Spinelli wanting to take them back there and essentially disprove what she said previously is an act that's more or less intended to make her friends rethink everything she said after that, kind of in an attempt to retroact the damage that she's already done. She's come to realize that the magic of Halloween isn't necessarily in ghosts or monsters, but instead it's about having fun and choosing to be a part of the festivities if you want to. It's about believing in the spirit and wanting to spread joy and positivity. Ultimately, I feel like episodes like this one are really important. They serve as an excellent reminder to cherish those family traditions, but also to be mindful of others, because you casting doubt on anyone's joys can have a very wide rippling effect that will spread very easily, even if you don't realize you're doing it. Personally, I find it to be a shame that Disney really stuck so strong to that 65 episode rule, especially as far as Recess is concerned. Seeing the moral of the story here and knowing the incredible potential behind these characters in combination with the formative age that I myself was at when the show came to an end, I really feel like if they had done at least just one more full season focused on 5th grade, it would have had a lot of potential to not only be genuinely good TV, but also give us kids growing up some good lessons to hold on to for years to come. But what do you guys think? Do you think the Recess story deserved to be told past the events of the first movie? Let me know in the comments down below. I always love seeing your guys' feedback. Of course, massive shout out with all of the love in the world to my patrons, especially those of you in the true 90s kids tier. I wouldn't be able to do this without your support, and I genuinely appreciate every single one of you. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like and give a little praise to the algorithm in hopes that it pushes this one to everyone else. If you'd like to go on a, well, I guess not so nostalgic and very angry walk down a SpongeBob lane, check out this video on the left here, or you can check out this awesome video on the right. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you all in the next one. Peace.